Hello, everyone. This is the Campus Compact AmeriCorps VISTA Anti-Poverty Initiative presentation, hosted by myself, Stephanie Diaz, and Allegra Hardin. I am the Campus Compact AmeriCorps VISTA at the Service Learning Academy. If you're not familiar with AmeriCorps or VISTA, AmeriCorps is the domestic version of the Peace Corps, and VISTAs are volunteers in service to America. And we work across the country with universities, nonprofits, and other agencies to address poverty. This past year, I have been working on creating content and resources for the Service Learning Academy, as well as for our P-12 teachers, UNO professors, and community partners to address poverty through service learning.
And I'm Allegra Hardin. I am the new Campus Compact AmeriCorps VISTA for the Service Learning Academy for the year 2020 to 2021. During my service term, I'll be building on the anti-poverty service learning content created this past year. One of my main goals will be to use those resources and turn them into training modules and databases so it will be more accessible for teachers, administrators, faculty, and community partners to participate in addressing poverty through service learning. So we want to begin by just noting that we are not the experts when it comes to this. So Stephanie has spent several months reading and researching about poverty, and I am beginning this research as well. And we are looking specifically at poverty in the United States and Omaha and how it affects education. So I'm here to share what I know and what I've learned, but mostly what I want to learn from the experts in our community, such as our teachers, professors, community leaders, and of course its members. As educators, you work with students daily and see firsthand the effects of poverty and how it impacts their learning. And as community partners, you work with community members and provide resources and services to folks experiencing poverty on a daily basis. I hope that together we can learn from each other and generate information and connections, because I believe you all to be the experts in this area. With that said, I'm going to transition off to Stephanie to discuss her first year in VISTA work.
So for the first year in VISTA work, I really spent a lot of time creating content, pulling information together to discuss the intersection of service learning, education, and poverty. Past year, I've spent creating and pulling together these resources to share with amazing individuals who promote and support this type of work. I highlighted facts about students who are currently experiencing poverty and how addressing poverty through service learning can be done. And this is done through the lens of asset-based work. We want to look at the resources that communities or schools have instead of just the deficits. We recognize that there are deficits, but we want to use the assets and resources that the community or school has in order to address them. They are not only the receivers of the service, but they are co-teaching the students that enter those spaces as well.
So with that said, we want to talk a little bit more about asset-based community engagement. And so asset-based community engagement is a way to work with communities by focusing on their strengths rather than their deficits. So asset-based community engagement is built on 4 key foundations. Number 1, it focuses on community assets and strengths rather than problems and needs. Number 2, it identifies and mobilizes individual and community assets, skills, and passions. Number 3, it is community driven. And number 4, it is relationship driven. By understanding that all communities have assets, asset-based community engagement recognizes that everyone in the community has skills, interests, and experiences that can help strengthen their community. Because asset-based community engagement starts with a community's strengths, some people worry that it overlooks a community's needs. However, by focusing on a community's assets, communities can use the resources they already have to address their concerns. And as a result, community engagement that is asset-based is much more sustainable than community engagement that is needs-based.
So with that said, we also wanted to look at social determinants. These are aspects of a person's life that help them become healthy, stable, and essentially successful. The social determinants model basically states that healthcare only accounts for 10% of what makes a person healthy, because there are other factors that really are along the person's path that impact their life, that impact their health. So some of those things include accessibility to housing and transportation, money and resources, good jobs, education and skills, the food that we eat, friends and families, and community, having access to all of these things. Positive childhood experiences and having access to resources, education, and close connections help provide exposure for future opportunities, such as jobs, networking. And students who may be lacking in some of these aforementioned categories may be students who are experiencing poverty, not all, but some. And not necessarily poverty in a socioeconomic sense, but they may be just lacking certain things that are inhibiting them from reaching that success that they're trying to obtain.
Beyond the social determinants model, we can look at economic data in Nebraska and in Omaha to gain a better insight of how poverty touches the lives of children and young people in the state. Beginning with Nebraska as a whole, 12.9% of children in the state are experiencing poverty. However, this is only one measure of how poverty impacts the lives of children in Nebraska. Within that 12.9%, there are disparities among children of color. 24.3% of Hispanic children and 30% of Black or African American children are experiencing poverty, compared to 8.2% of white children. More specifically, 14.4% of Douglas County households have children experiencing poverty, and 33.6% of children of color are experiencing poverty. When looking at poverty and education in Omaha, we find that 21.4% of students enrolled in school are experiencing poverty. Within that 21.4% of students, you can see the breakdown of the percent of students of poverty by each education level. Poverty comes to affect students in a number of ways. Specifically, K-12 students' experiences with poverty can affect their higher education outcomes. Low-income students are less likely to attend more selective colleges, less likely to graduate from college, and less likely to earn a graduate degree. When we combine what we know about students experiencing poverty during their K-12 education, we seek to find ways to keep these students engaged and continuing their studies. And a method of keeping them engaged could be service learning projects.
So having that background knowledge of students who are being affected by poverty in Omaha, Nebraska, we wanted to look at how poverty impacts students' time in school. So many children in poverty feel alienated from society because of their socioeconomic status. And there are certain effects that go along with experiencing poverty, kind of like what we discussed in the social determinants model. And of these effects can include absences. You know, if you don't have access to healthcare, you may not be going to school. If you don't have access to transportation or childcare, those may be inhibitors of going to school. Students missing more than 5% of the school year in 2017 to 2018 had free and reduced lunch status. Students in elementary and middle school service learning programs, however, showed reduced levels of alienation and behavioral problems. What we know also with service learning is that students who participate in these projects demonstrate increased school engagement, which is a factor in maintaining educational attainment. And this is often an obstacle for students experiencing poverty. Schools that also sponsor service learning projects and programs report that attendance has increased every year over a 3-year period of time, which is an issue, for example, with Omaha Public Schools, that 27% of their students missed 10% or more of their time enrolled in school during the 2017-2018 school year. The correlation between a school's poverty rate and test scores can be evident. For example, again, with OPS high schools, their students who were experiencing poverty scored significantly lower than other students who may not have been experiencing poverty. 83% of schools with service learning programs report that grade point averages of those participating in service learning projects improved 76% of the time. So just to reiterate, students that may be experiencing poverty may be experiencing lower test scores, lower educational attainment. However, if there are students who are participating in service learning project, this can make a positive impact on their attendance and potentially on their academic achievement. One specific project that we wanted to highlight that discusses this intersection with education poverty and was a service learning project was the redlining project. This included a UNO Teacher Scholars class, Crestridge Elementary, and Inclusive Communities. They hosted table talks to discuss redlining and the results of this practice. If you're unfamiliar with redlining, it is the practice of refusing loans to someone because they live in an area deemed to be a poor financial risk, and thereby sectioning them off and limiting them. Particularly people who were people of color, from ethnic communities, from leaving these neighborhoods. These were the people that were affected. And you can learn more about this practice if you visit the site provided by the Union of Contemporary Arts right here on the slide.
This concludes our presentation. If you are looking for more information, please feel free to contact me via email at aharden@unomaha.edu or contact the Service Learning Academy's main office. We thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about the Campus Compact AmeriCorps VISTA Anti-Poverty Initiative with the Service Learning Academy. If you would like to get involved with this work, I encourage you to check out the Campus Compact AmeriCorps VISTA flyer and scanning the QR code on the page to take a brief survey about your interest in anti-poverty service learning and resource sharing. Your collaboration makes this initiative possible. Thank you.